You are listening to or watching the Filmcast, and today we are going to be discussing Halloween Ends, the latest conclusion to the Halloween trilogy, of which there have been many Halloween movies and reboots.
There's never going to be another
such.
one. It's right there in the title.
No, I think certainly. I mean, this one made hundreds of millions of dollars, so they're definitely not going to make any more of these. But yeah, they're probably going to make more. The IMDb plot summary reads: the saga of Michael Myers and Laurie Strode comes to a spine-chilling climax in this final installment of this trilogy, end quote. So this promises to be the conclusion of the Michael Myers, Laurie Strode story that began so long ago with the very first Halloween movie, that obviously created the character of Michael Myers and has inspired generations of horror fans. Let's start with this question, Devindra. Did you find this to be a worthy conclusion to the Laurie Strode story?
You know what? Yes, I did find that. I also found this movie to be a lot of other things. As I was watching, I was like, oh man, Dave and Jeff will probably hate this movie because it is so weird and so bonkers. So I can go on with my full review.
Yeah, please. So
yeah.
You thought it was a satisfying conclusion. What did you think of the rest of the movie, Devindra?
I mean, satisfying in the sense that I think since the first reboot movie from David Gordon Green, so what was that, 2018?
Yeah,
we've been kind of waiting for this, and they've been kind of selling it too. And that movie, gave us Laurie Strode as a, super badass person who's been shaped by trauma and is living in this crazy, cabin, is ready to like go fight Michael Myers at any turn. Didn't work out so well. That last movie that we reviewed, I still am reeling at how kind of like wild that movie got. But I do think this movie puts this trilogy, like it kind of gives the trilogy a shape, and kind of makes the middle movie make more sense. Even if I didn't care about the crowd dynamics, I didn't care about, crowds going crazy in a Halloween story. But I think this movie is just really interesting and really weird and really bonkers. Like it kept surprising me. It kept making me say, what the hell is happening? And I wouldn't call it a perfect movie, but I do think it's a really interesting one because they kind of took this franchise, which has been done so many times. And we've seen the story over and over again to the point where they have to mix up the timelines. They have to like, okay, this one's another sequel to Halloween 2. Forget about those Rob Zombie movies. Like we are just in a mess of this franchise. Whereas this one is just like, hey, what if we kind of take a core idea? Let's deal with the notion of evil and how it's born and maybe how it manifests and how it transfers, and how a society also treats somebody who they view as evil and how that ends up shaping them. This movie is juggling a lot of ideas. I think it's really silly at times. Characters don't always act like human beings, but I also think it's really interesting. Like I had a lot of fun watching it to the point where you get to the ending and it's like, okay, there are certain things about that I find pretty damn satisfying, especially since you guys made so much fun of me for talking about my crazy idea to chop off Michael Myers' head. Oh, you have this notorious serial killer just laying there? You're not going to do the finishing blow? How many movies have we spent dealing with that? So anyway, this movie kind of also reckons with that whole thing too, which I found a lot of fun. I think this movie is bonkers and it has more soul and more energy than the last two Halloween movies. It's messy. It's a mess. It's fine. But I also think it's a really entertaining mess. And that makes me just really kind of dig it.
Jeff Kanata, your thoughts on Halloween Ends?
Well, Dave, I guess you could say my thoughts on Halloween Ends are best summed up in the form of a limerick. Finding an end must be daunting. Michael Myers for decades was haunting. But this ain't Halloween till the final 15 when it finally becomes what we're wanting.
Okay. So it's 15 minutes of a good movie is what you're saying.
15 minutes. I mean, I know that Devindra always loves movies that take a big swing, and you can't argue that this movie doesn't take a big swing. But it's
multiple big swings, I would argue.
It's taking a big swing in the wrong sport.
Who made you the referee? Halloween movies.
It's playing cricket when we want baseball.
Exactly. We had two movies of baseball, and then we're like, nah, how How about cricket now?
How about two boring movies of baseball where like I desperately want something different? Can I change the channel to another sport, please? This movie kinda
Maybe.
does
I mean,
that.
I think that's a fair assessment. And if that was your feeling of the first two movies, then this probably does feel like a breath of fresh air. To me, this is the rise of Skywalker of the Halloween trilogy, where it just goes, fuck all that stuff. We're doing this. When I was like, hey, it would be really cool if we had, we've been building up this trilogy and we've got this, it's Halloween Ends, right? Okay, you set out to make 3 movies and here's the third one that's really going to put a conclusion on the first 2 experiences that we had of this reboot series of trilogy. But it just doesn't seem to give a crap about any of that. It just wants to reinvent itself to be something completely different, which is fine. Like, make that movie. If you want to make that movie, but don't tell me this is the thrilling conclusion of this trilogy, because it doesn't feel like that until the last 15 minutes of the movie. And it baffles me because like, I just like, what do we do? Why do I care about any of this?
Listen,
Why
don't you care about Corey, everybody's favorite Halloween character?
Yes, Corey. Yeah.
That guy, Corey.
All of a sudden, Laurie Strode is acting in a way that wasn't set up at all in the first 2 movies. It's like, it's doing its own thing. It is so weird to me. And I kept just sitting there going, why? Why? And Michael Myers doesn't act like he's ever acted before in any of the movies. And we hang out with them very like I go to a Halloween movie, especially the one called Halloween Ends. I don't know, to see Michael Myers do literally anything.
Eventually, there will be some Michael Myers in this Michael Myers horror film.
Yes, in the thrilling conclusion to the Laurie Strode Michael Myers tale, maybe have Michael Myers in it at any point.
I feel like he's kind of a one-trick pony, right? We have seen Michael Myers all over the place. So I don't know. I was looking for something a little different, maybe. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to share some of my thoughts about Halloween Ends, but first I want to say that we just had a really big issue with our recording program. And this is the latest of many issues with that recording program. So if we sound and look different than how we just looked 5 seconds ago, that's why. Sorry about that, but we're going to press on and finish the review anyway. So, Halloween Ends. I agree with what you're saying, Jeff, about how they've marketed this movie. I played a trailer for this movie on the podcast version of the Filmcast, and it's a really weird trailer, first of all, because they don't do anything to tell you that is the title of that YouTube video was Halloween Ends official trailer. So this is not some like 10-second teaser that was released like 8 months ago.
And that's the one with Michael Myers just creeping up on Laurie, right?
He's creeping up on Laurie, and Laurie and him are like fighting, and that's the whole trailer. That's the whole trailer. There's nothing else about what the story of this movie is, or who are the characters in it, or whatever. And I think they
tune in to see the thrilling conclusion of these 2 characters.
Right, exactly. And I think they knew that if they, it is a case where I think the marketing is very deceptive. I think they're marketing one thing, and then the movie is actually something very different.
But not just marketing, like the title, the fact that it's the third of this trilogy. It's it's not just marketing; it's the entire thrust of the endeavor. To me,
I thought you guys liked surprises. I thought you liked to be surprised. I thought the trailers gave away everything, guys. This is a trailer that is deliberately hiding the movie from you. So yes, it is deceptive, but I don't know. Maybe it's my personality, but I was just cackling. I was like, oh, the pre-title sequence of this movie is just like something nobody expected.
I mean, the pre-title sequence is awesome in this movie.
And there's a point where the guy, Corey, just looks at the camera and is like, this is Halloween. We're going to have a great time. And I was like, oh, this movie is just going to mess with us. And I was just like strapped in for that ride. But I can fully understand. Like, it's not for everybody. Yeah.
It does take some big swings. And in spoilers, in just a moment, we'll talk about how successfully some of those big swings land. I am ultimately grateful that it does try to do something different, right? Like, we all want movies to do something different. And so I give it a lot of points for that. But I don't think it delivers on A, the promise of a conclusion to Laurie Strode and Michael Myers, and B, what people in general are looking for from Halloween movies, which is like Halloween Kills. I think we had a lot of problems with that movie, if I recall correctly. But what you cannot dispute is that Halloween Kills had some great kills, right? Like, regardless of how bad the movie is,
title correct, yes,
exactly. And this one was arguably correct as well. But like, this movie, I don't think really delivers on the great kills.
No,
right? And so there's a couple of okay kills, but like
a couple of good ones.
Compare it to the Halloween Kills, and like the kills in that movie are way better, way more interesting. I mean, I think there's a sequence in this movie at the beginning of the sequence where at the beginning of the movie where they like flash back to all the people that died in Halloween Kills, if I recall correctly. And those kills were way cooler than this movie, if you recall. So
and you wait an hour until anything even remotely interesting on that front happens.
Yeah.
I mean, did we miss a child falling from 4 floors? Their neck snaps and they bounce off of the floor and just curdle in the pool of their own blood in the first like 4 minutes of this movie. I don't know. There's some things.
All right. Well, we're going to have to agree to disagree on some things, obviously, but I was pretty disappointed by this movie. But I do think that there's been a lot of discourse online this week on film Twitter about this movie. And specifically, this movie has very polarizing. Like, a lot of people are like, this is great, and other people saying, this is terrible. And I remember I saw one tweet that's like, can we just fast forward to the part where people start tweeting about Halloween Ends as a misunderstood masterpiece?
Yeah. And that's all I'm doing, guys. That's all I'm doing.
I do think that because of how ambitious this movie is and because of how different it is, that we probably will look back on it as like, that was a pretty interesting movie. I don't think it delivers what people were looking for and are looking for in a Halloween movie. But I think that its sheer ambition is so high that it's probably going to land some hits, and that will probably give it points in the long run as we think back on all the vast works of Halloween films. So
you got to compare it to some of those Halloween sequels. And I have very little memory. Like Seasons of Witch, I think is kind of fun, and that one has been reconsidered as now a really interesting sequel. But the vast majority of them, I don't care about the Rob Zombie movies. I don't care about a lot of them, whereas this one's like, oh, I am, I feel like Leonardo DiCaprio in Django. It's like, oh, now you have my interest now because
you have my attention. You had my curiosity. Now you have my attention. I think it's what it is.
I mean, I think with any series like this where it has that many installments, it's a pretty low bar to clear. There's going to be a lot of schlock. These 80s horror franchises, though, they were just shoveling sequels out for a while.
Yeah,
but what they set out to what they declared they were going to do here is say, hey, we're bringing back Jamie Lee Curtis, and we're going to do 3 movies that really analyze this relationship between the two of them. And for 2 of those movies, they did that.
Yeah.
And then this movie, they just fucked off and did something else.
I disagree, but
it's super weird.
Spoilers.
Yeah, I want to get to spoilers, but I also want to say before spoilers that I also think that the other thing they're trying to do was pretty poorly executed. Here.
Yeah.
And we could talk about that in detail in spoilers, but I think for my money, like even if I grant that, hey, doing something different is interesting, and I do think in general that's the case with most films, the different thing they did here, I think, was handled in a kind of rote, pat, not very interesting way.
Yeah, I agree. But let's dive into spoilers for Halloween Ends, starting right now. Let's just start with what I think is this movie's original sin right off the bat, right from the beginning. I mean, put aside the pre-title sequence, which is I think is great. It's like a great sequence, and obviously sets up one of the main theses of the movie, as you said, Devindra, of like, if people think you're evil, does that make you become evil, right? And that's a theme we've seen in a lot of like criminal justice stuff, throughout the years.
For sure.
And I think it's actually pretty well executed. That both the opening scene and also the idea of Corey feeling like this environment is suffocating him and like forcing him to become a different person. At the beginning of Halloween in 2018, what do we know about Laurie Strode? She suffered this like horrifying attack in the original Halloween film decades ago. And as a result of that attack, she became a survivalist. She learned how to use weapons.
She became full Sarah Connor in Terminator 2. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Okay. Think of what has happened to Laurie Strode since that time. Okay.
Yes.
She's suffered 2 separate attacks from Michael Myers, who,
dead.
by the way, is still at large at the beginning of this film.
Yeah.
And her daughter has been murdered by Michael Myers.
Yeah.
And in response to that, the character who was a survivalist at the beginning of Halloween 2018 is like, guess what? I'm going to move back home and live out in the open again.
Makes no sense.
I'm going to be a grandma. I'm going to make some pies. I'm just going to have no security system in my house.
It makes no sense.
Yeah. I mean,
the thing is, it's weird because we've set up this trajectory and it just goes, forget all of that.
Yeah.
Here's this different character. Like if we had been introduced to Laurie Strode in the first remake Halloween movie in 2018, and this is where she was, that's completely different. But as you enumerated, Dave, that's not the thing that we're building up to this climax, to this crescendo, and it just goes throw out everything that we established. I don't get it. I don't understand that.
I think part of the reason I don't have a huge problem with this is because I felt that was very cheap. Doing that to Laurie Strode, basically like somebody defined by her trauma, basically living in a life in a super secure compound, right? And her kids are like, this has ruined our lives, I've never really had a life because of what you've done. And to me, that gave Michael Myers so much power over her in a way. To me, that felt like a weakening of her character.
But then that becomes the challenge that she must overcome, right? Sure. You don't just start the movie as her. She's like, I'm fine with it. My daughter was killed. I'm good.
I agree with you, Devindra, that kind of the best quote unquote revenge in a situation like this is to live a life free from fear. Like that, that is like what we ultimately want in terms of overcoming trauma. From my perspective, people can tell me if they feel differently, but that is the problem with the fundamental construct of a movie like this is in the Halloween movies, Laurie Strode's caution is basically warranted because he is still out there. He's still killing people, right? Yeah. So there's this tension of you want people to be able to overcome trauma and live normal lives. Like that's a good positive message. But also, all of their paranoia is justified because there's a freaking killing machine out there. And so it's like, there's a narrative tension there that I don't think this movie fully bridges. Why does the movie take this path, Jeff? It's because it has all these messages that it wants to say about contagion and about evil and about how evil can spread, right?
Yeah.
And so it kind of uses Laurie Strode as this prop to be like, okay, we need to get Laurie Strode to this point where she's like, back at home and introducing her daughter to rando strangers and her granddaughter to rando strangers. And like, it's only if she does that this plot will work. Like it feels like they had a thing they wanted to communicate about evil and contagion. And they're like, we're going to manipulate the pieces of the plot to or the pieces of the Halloween franchise to make that happen.
That's why I call it the Rise of Skywalker of the Halloween franchise. Cause it decides it wants to do this thing now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The last two movies haven't wanted to do that thing, but now we're doing this thing. So let's just reset the chessboard however we want to make this thing happen.
The reason I push back against that is because we kind of know that Rise of Skywalker was a rushed production, right? That was we got this thing moving. We got a train moving. Oh no, the end of the track hasn't been finished. Let's just do a story there. Whereas David Gordon Green and his collaborators, including Danny McBride, which always is a funny thing to remind myself of, I feel like they had time. Like they had time to shape this trilogy. And to me, it is of a piece with what Halloween Kills did, which I didn't really appreciate at all. Like I agree with you guys. I think that movie was a mess, and also sure it had cool kills, but I'm not somebody who's going to, hey, there's a frog in my office. I'm not somebody who's going to
What?
It's just hanging out. I'm not somebody, it's the ghost of Michael Myers over here. I'm not somebody who's going to horror movies for I get enjoyment from visceral kills. I'm more like, okay, what are those kills telling me maybe about character or story or something, which is maybe also why I've been bored by a lot of the Halloween series too, because at the end of the day, it's just one dude, man. It's just one dude. We gotta do something about this one dude. Let's restrain him.
Well,
let's start doing something. And I feel like that Kills also disappointed me in that respect. But the overall message of what this series has been doing is, first one, Sets up Laurie. That is all Laurie as Terminator. Second one is the society, the group, the group mentality can also, this can infect the group and also turn people evil. And then this one is like, what if somebody who is perfectly good and on a righteous path of life has this one accident, and then society turns against them, and then their life is, you know, forever changed because of that too. So it fits. It may not be what we wanted to see, but I do think it fits at the least. I wouldn't call it Rise of Skywalker. It's just like something, we didn't like the plan they had in mind, but I feel like there was a plan.
I see that
pretty compelling case, Devindra.
No, I think that's well said, and you know, I saw that as it was happening too. This notion of the second movie being about the community, and then the community also in the third movie, you know, turning this. By the way, Corey and Laurie, that's what we're going with. We're going with Corey and Laurie. Anyway, sorry, but you know, turning Corey into this monster. But as it plays out, I kind of don't even buy it. Like, first of all, we have this weird conflicting situation of Corey for the first time finding someone that potentially could love him and care for him. And at the same time, he's turning to this darkness and finding Michael Myers in a hole in the ground somehow.
As you do. You crawl through a sewer and you find Michael Myers.
I suppose, but first, it turns Michael Myers into this weird abstraction for 90% of the movie, which is very odd to me. But I think it would be much more effective. Like for me, it rings hollow that the same time that you are being drawn to the dark side, you are also falling in love and finding a woman that cares about you and sees you and wants to run away with you. Like, those two things seem antithetical to me. And
he was doing that before, though, right?
Yeah. Well, I feel like I mean, it tends to be the case that loneliness and that isolation is what might turn you to, you know, this kind of violent, dark behavior. That seems more plausible to me than like, oh, he finally finds a woman who cares about him or is potentially, you know, interested in him, potentially will turn her back on this entire town and leave it. And he gets sidetracked into what? I just didn't buy his journey, his transformation at all. Like, the movie doesn't seed it in an effective way for my money at all. And in fact, it feels like it plays against any kind of plausibility in that regard. And what it's doing with the Michael Myers character just seems completely bonker. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
It's giving him almost spiritual powers in a sense, like you are imbued with my essence, Corey. You may go murder now.
It's like it's doing a send up. It's like he's doing a send up of reboot of like Lego sequels where it's like son of Michael Myers. You know, it's weird.
Sort of like that. One thing I want to note though is that, you know, the movie does give us a lot of examples of this society treating Corey like shit. In the one moment he goes and like lets loose and has a little fun with this one girl who sees something good in him, he's confronted with the wife of the, you know, child he killed. And he rejects the granddaughter. I keep forgetting her name at this point. I feel like her character is also really weakly written because I have more of an issue with this man is clearly turning into some sort of like psychopath or some sort of like monster of a type. And she's more like, I love him more now because of this. I will do whatever it takes. But I do think like his turn, it's those a great group of like shit teenagers, you know, teen bullies just beating up this 20-something dude. But like it is after he rejects the granddaughter, he's beat up by the kids, basically left for dead. He finds some sort of redemption. He finds something in the spirit of Michael Myers, and at that point, the movie just gets like magical or spiritual or something.
Yeah, he like fights Michael Myers to get his mask from him. Like what? What?
It's mine now.
Allison is the name of the granddaughter.
Allison.
By the way.
Yeah, she I agree. She's completely underwritten. Makes no sense. I kept waiting for some like connection of, oh, I'm drawn to him because of the family trauma, and so that's how I saw love.
She does say that. She does say that in the movie. But yeah, I understand. I understand it's more telling and not showing in the movie. But they do at least acknowledge that. To me, this feels like some weirdness happened here with this whole storyline, guys. Like specifically the radio tower. Like there was clearly some subplot that was cut out of this movie because like, why show the radio tower? Why has he at the top of the radio? There clearly was some kind of point they were trying to make about the radio tower spreading evil or something, but it just got cut from the movie. It's just not in the movie.
There's so much made of that radio station. Like the movie starts with the radio station. We're constantly hammered with the radio station. And we see the billboards of the radio station, and it's
billboards
like,
of it. I do feel like that DJ
coolest kill though. It's a
very cool kill. Very cool kill.
Good
And also
kill.
meaningful in a way too, in terms of like probably the second tongue we've seen ripped off this week, Dave. But yeah, this is good moment. Good moment. It does speak to like the noxiousness of media, right? And like whatever that guy was putting out there, and I feel like we didn't get enough of that in the movie. But he would be the guy to be like, Michael Myers is still out there. Lock your doors, everybody. He could be anywhere, and like seeding that fear of the town would be the thing going through the radio and going through the tower and everything. I agree. That part is a mess. Yeah.
And I almost found it comical when Corey interacts with Michael Myers the first time, because he has that, I guess it's like this like a-hole cop basically that's down there, right? And he's like holding the cop down, and he says to Michael Myers like, teach me your ways. And it's like, dude, Michael Myers is not like super skilled. Like his killing mostly comes
you basically stab him with a knife. Lesson 1, grab knife. Lesson 2, stab with knife.
Find me in the peanut down by the river.
Really come a long way, my pupil.
There's so a great like Mr. Miyagi like moment here going on.
It is
hilarious.
It is ridiculous when he's like, teach me your ways. And then the guy like puts the knife in, and he's like, oh, I see. Put the knife into the guy. Oh, take the knife out again, put it back in. It's like, okay.
Wasn't that cop the granddaughter's biological father, I believe? Like granddaughter's father? Or is that's what I was reading from it.
Yeah.
I didn't get that.
Yeah.
Because he like introduces himself as her dad, almost, but then he's clearly sexually harassing her. I thought, like later on,
hey, you don't want to have a relationship with your father. What's wrong with you? Yada yada. I don't know. He's clearly a creep. Yeah.
Well, anyway, but that. I was like, at every turn, I'm trying to like give this movie credit. I'm like, oh, it's kind of a cool idea that like he's like infected with Michael Myers' evil, but then he's like, teach me, and I'm like, oh, this is so ridiculous. And then he like confronts Laurie, and then Laurie kills him, and that's like a pretty cool scene. And then Laurie has a 15-minute fight scene with Michael Myers, and that's basically
you got it, guys. Like we have spent so many movies of just watching Laurie versus Michael versus Laurie, back and forth. Whereas this one is like, I feel like it kind of got to the point where Laurie heard our review of the last movie. You know, it's just like, pin him down. He's a human person. Just start hacking. Just start hacking off pieces. You know. And,
I mean, nothing in the previous movies leads you to believe that he's just a human person.
I guess,
you know what I mean.
And even this movie is like he's vaguely supernatural or something.
Yeah. So that rang really odd to me. Where her conclusion was he's just a man. It's like, is he though? Because
well, just try hacking off pieces. You could try hacking off the pieces and seeing if that stops him. You know.
I mean, there's another version of this movie where it could have been, we just watched a fantastic movie called Prey. That's about like one character going after another. Action packed movie the whole way through, right?
Right.
This could have been, just a whole movie of Laurie Strode trying to evade Michael Myers and, him causing carnage along the way, and that's what a lot of other movies have been. They're like, we're going to try something completely different this time.
We watched Drive, and we're going to make that movie in the Halloween universe. I don't know. The other thing that doesn't make any sense to me,
Jeff, what's the Drive parallel? What's the Drive parallel that you're referring to?
I mean, he gets that motorcycle, and she's just riding with him. They're just
It's very like Rebel Youth. There's a whole bunch of movies like that.
So weird.
I mean, there's more like heads getting caved in Drive than there is in this movie.
It's true. If you're here for heads getting caved in, I got another movie to reference. But the other thing that doesn't make any sense to me, if what they're doing is like, evil just changes form and moves. Like, why kill Corey? Why have Corey kill himself? Why shouldn't Corey walk off into the sunset with the scarecrow mask and be like?
He says it. If nobody can have the granddaughter, like if he can't have the granddaughter, then
I get why he as a character.
Yeah.
I'm saying on a meta level, if the movie is saying like, oh, you managed to kill Michael Myers, but you didn't kill evil, then have the new personification of evil persist at the end of the movie. You don't even have to make sequels with Scarecrow Boy, Corey the Scarecrow Boy, but you could still, I think that's a more powerful message to say, oh, hey, evil just changes form. We're never safe. It's just going to be something else. But no, it doesn't even, it fumbles that ball.
Again, it is, I don't disagree with you thematically, but it is a bold move to just have that guy off himself at the end of the movie. Like that's just like, oh, I didn't expect that coming, and it does fit in with the plot they've set up for that character. So
explain to me what happens exactly, because he stabs himself with a wound that no one could recover from, but then he comes back and puts his hand on Michael Myers' leg. Like what's his, and then Michael Myers is like, I'm gonna kill you, even though I had plenty of options to do that earlier. Like what even is the dynamic at that point? The movie's so muddled. I just don't get any of it.
Well, it's more like you have failed me, pupil. You know, I gave you one job.
Yeah, I gave you one job. Don't stab yourself in the throat.
I gave you the knife tutorial.
Knife goes out.
Knife goes in other person.
Idiot. Other people.
Yes. That's just fire Corey.
And so, having failed that test, Michael Myers is like, "You can't fall. You're not worthy of following me. You're fired. You're fired."
Oh man, that's so hard to find good pupils these days in the stabbing biz.
I will say that when it comes to getting rid of Michael Myers, they did seemingly definitively do that in this episode.
I cheered. I was cheering.
There is a TikTok account that's literally, the whole TikTok account is just someone inserting objects into that machine. Basically, and then
It's a terrifying machine.
You seeing like if something, like a car or a food truck or a food cart or something, they'll throw this thing or an umbrella or whatever, and they'll just throw it in there and it just get crushed. And I'm like,
you know what you're gonna get next though? Evil cars. Let's go.
Well,
Christine,
I find that machine terrifying because all I can think of is like tripping and falling or putting your hand in there.
I half expected him to like grab Laurie and like bring her in at a moment or something too.
Again, would have been cool. The only argument I have on the opposite, wasn't there a Friday the 13th where they literally bring Jason back from like a single molecule or something like that? Like, didn't they like regrow or something? Maybe I'm confusing that with Wolverine.
My esteem of the Friday the 13th franchise is far lower than even the Halloween movie. So they must have done that. Jason went to space at one point. Yeah.
Seemingly he's definitively dead. And I was trying to think like the whole time I'm trying to think like, what is this movie trying to say? You know? And I do think that like the idea of, evil being spread or evil being caused by like Devindra, you put it well, like this guy had this accident and it like changed the course of his life and like potentially turned him in a bad way. I will say I think there's an unfortunate political parallel right now that's happening right now, like in the real world, where a lot of people on the right wing are writing articles and saying like, well, it's because like, people on the left look down on racists, it makes them even more racist, and I'm like, I do feel like there might be like a unfortunate parallel there of like, oh, you are like making people become terrible by treating them as terrible.
My favorite is the narrative of you were so bad to Mitt Romney that you created Trump.
That's exactly right. So I'm like, I hope the movie is not kind of like leaning in that territory, but I think for the most part it handles it pretty okay. The movie overall is pretty muddled, but I'm like, I just hope we're not slipping into like, that kind of mode. But anyway, but the very end, it's like, this feels like the town can finally move on,
Yeah.
And it's like, and all it took was them grinding this guy's body up in this machine.
Which it should have done in the first place.
I love the sheriff shows up and they're like, this isn't how it's done. He's like, it is tonight.
I love
grinding up a body.
The whole town's like, oh, we've been waiting for this. Yeah.
I like how they're like, are you sure it's Michael? It doesn't matter.
Are you sure it's Michael? Because very few people have actually seen this guy's face before.
No one's seen his face. We just showed up and there's a dude strapped to the hood of this car. fuck it, let's grind them up.
But yeah, it kind of made me wonder, like, is this movie trying to say something about mob justice again? Is it trying to say something of like the bloodlust of the mob must be sated somehow? Doesn't matter how.
It's
but then before I could think about it, the movie ends.
The movie
an afterthought.
But also, it ends on a happy note. I also feel like the catharsis for this entire town that's been terrorized by this, unstoppable killer forever is like, literally, you have to show him. Everybody has to go. Look, gone.
Like you have to show them all that he is dead, and we have to all collectively witness it. And now we can move on with our lives.
Move on with our lives. Now Laurie can have her little date with the cop, and it's great.
I do like that someone finally asked the question that every one of these kinds of movies needs to ask, which is like, why didn't you just move away from this horror town?
Yes.
And her answer is, these are where all my memories are.
Got too much
which is
history
the worst answer. For A, that's the definition of memories, is you leave them behind. And B, like, if that was the case, no one would ever move from anywhere ever. Like, obviously your memories are where you've lived. That's not an explanation of why you don't, like, they're it's a stupid line.
I feel like it is harder to believe in the Scream Town where more people die, people die. A lot more people die. The first Michael Myers killing was like, what, 5 or 6 people? It was not a huge killing spree.
It's a drop of the bucket.
Come on. You guys can move past that. Yeah.
Oh man.
At the end of the day, okay, here's an email we got actually from Danny T writing into /filmcast@gmail.com.
Danny T? No, Danny T.
And he writes, in my opinion, the big swings the filmmaker takes here miss disastrously, and they don't deserve any credit for taking a big swing for 3 reasons.
Agreed.
Number 1, in Halloween 2018, they established a solid understanding of the Haddonfield world, the characters, motivations, the messy nature of the franchise's legacy by completely retconning every installment after the original movie. Number 2, in Halloween Kills, they demonstrated a solid grasp of the idea that these movies and other slasher films are ultimately driven by the acts of one killer, that the style of the kills featured need to bear that killer's particular signature, and that the absence of a decent plot or the things by which we'd assess the quality of a movie in any other genre, more kills is usually better. Number 3, every inch of this trilogy, the marketing, the title, the things that Laurie says near the end of the movie, sells us on the concept that in this timeline, the central focus is Laurie versus Michael, bringing their conflict to a final conclusion. That all goes in the bin in this film. By the way, bin means trash, for those who aren't familiar with it. It's like going to a restaurant, ordering a pizza, and being served a flat, tasteless souffle. You explain that it's not what you ordered, and on top of that, not very good execution of something you didn't order, and they reply, yes, but at least we're trying something different and more complicated. I think the big swings defense can be deployed in other instances, perhaps could even have been used in this trilogy or implemented in parts 1 and 2, but not here. Love the show. Would love to get your thoughts. That's from Danny from Nottingham, England.
Danny, bravo. You said it better than I could. That is exactly how I feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like the first 2 movies didn't take that many swings, but okay. Yeah.
Well, he's saying that if they wanted to take a big swing, those are the movies to do it in.
It sounded more like those were the movies that actually took the big swings. I don't know.
Well, I think he's saying that, the first 2 movies have generated expectations for us that this movie did not fulfill, which is interesting relationship between Laurie and Michael, which is almost completely ignored in this movie.
Yes. Such an afterthought.
Almost completely. There's almost nothing in this movie about that, right?
Okay,
yes.
and so what the movie does give you, though, is Laurie working on her memoirs about being terrorized by Michael. Michael's on her mind the entire time. Laurie introducing her granddaughter to this kid. Seems nice. The whole town seems down on him. He turns into the second coming of Michael Myers, and only Laurie's the only person that sees what's happening again. It is not directly about Michael Myers, but she is still engaging with Michael Myers. Yeah.
That's a good connection. I mean, I will say that happens for like 8 minutes.
Sure.
Where she is actually aware of it, and then no, she's trying to convince everyone, no, he's the evil.
Yeah.
It's
I like
not.
That scene,
but yeah, you're technically correct. So I have to give you that.
The scene in the house too, where Corey just starts sleeping in the house where he killed the child, but Laurie's just in the back, just having
Yeah.
this conversation with him, I thought was pretty.
That was
that's
pretty
pretty
good. That was pretty
baller
good.
move. That's like she is now like Jason Bourne level, just like she can come up on the serial killer, say her thing and disappear.
Right.
Yeah.
That was awesome when she was like knocking
Yeah,
the chair in the back
yeah.
wall. That was cool. But can we talk about how stupid the scene is where she pretends like she's going to commit suicide in order to trap him? Because that's an effective bait. Like, the guy wants to kill me. I know what I'll do. I'll pretend I'm going to kill myself. So he has to come in the room to kill me before I can do it. If he doesn't, what am I going to do? Just not follow through, I guess.
It gets the cops there too, so it's like it's another thing. Although the cops seem to be taking their sweet time.
I mean, the
Sweet
cops are
time.
so helpful throughout this franchise.
helpful.
I don't know if you remember.
I love the line. I need to report a suicide. Oh, okay, ma'am. Thank you for the reporting of the suicide. No one's going to be like, is it you maybe that's suiciding?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, as I was saying, the first film kind of establishes the Laurie Michael relationship. You're right; they do address it a little bit. It's pretty half baked in my opinion. But anyway, the second film is like, okay, we're gonna amp up the kill. Like Halloween Kills has some of the most vicious, bloody kills in the whole franchise. So it's like, oh, well, surely the third film will deliver on at least that front, but it really doesn't. Like probably like 6 people die in this whole movie. And very few of the kills are particularly memorable. So, anyway.
I mean, there's the tongue one with the record player is by far the standout.
Very good.
Very good. And then I think blowtorch into mouth was pretty good.
Oh,
but that's
man.
like,
and the camera just like peers back and like it's out of
Yeah.
it's like you can imagine. I feel like you're better off imagining what that looks like because oof.
I don't know.
Well, at the end of the day, despite literally everything we have just said,
We won't have to talk about a Halloween movie ever again. There's
Yeah,
not.
it ended.
Halloween
It
ends.
ends.
but it's still pretty impressive that David Gordon Green made a movie, a trilogy of movies, in fact. Thank you so much for watching this video of the Filmcast. Check out these other videos that we have available, and be sure to hit like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to get other videos from us in the future.
You can also go to thefilmcast.com to catch all of our audio podcast versions of all of our episodes.
And support this podcast at patreon.com/filmpodcast, where you can sign up for ad-free episodes and exclusive After Darks.
Thanks so much to everyone who makes the Filmcast possible.